The soft clinking of champagne glasses rang through the private dining room of Harper's on the Lake, a place that smelled of roasted rosemary and warm bread. I smoothed the sleeve of my pale blue silk blouse, my small armor for the night, and kept my smile gentle as the waiter refilled our glasses. This was supposed to be a celebration, my grandson Ethan's graduation from Columbia. My heart swelled each time I caught his proud, nervous grin across the table. Yet a thin ribbon of tension curled in the air, subtle as the whisper of the lake outside. Across from me, my daughter-in-law, Lauren, sat rigid, her lipstick a shade too bright against the frost in her eyes. She had hardly spoken to me all evening, only clipped remarks about the wine list, the weather, Ethan's future. I tried not to notice, but the silence was a living thing, prickling against my skin. Then, as Ethan raised his glass to thank everyone for their love and support, Lauren's voice cut through the room like a shard of glass. "You embarrass me," she said, her words sharp enough to draw blood. "I'm disgusted by you." The room froze. Forks hovered midair. My breath caught, my heart thudding in my chest. For a moment, even the lake seemed to still. I met her glare and said nothing. Not yet. My life had taught me the power of silence, the kind that carries decades of stories no one has heard until the right moment arrives. Lauren's words echoed in my ears like a cruel refrain, and suddenly the clinking of glasses faded. The sound that replaced it came from far away, decades back, when I was 23 and standing on the porch of my father's farmhouse in Asheville, North Carolina. It was late spring, the air heavy with honeysuckle and rain. I can still feel the damp wood beneath my bare feet, the way the boards trembled when my father's anger finally boiled over. "You can't just leave, Madison," he said, his broad frame blocking the doorway. "A woman doesn't run off to some city to make it on her own. It's reckless. Foolish." "I have to try, Daddy," I whispered, though my voice quavered. My hands shook so badly I pressed them against my skirt to hide it. "It's not foolish to want something different." His jaw tightened. "You'll come crawling back. And don't expect this house to be waiting." The words sliced through me sharper than any winter wind. I swallowed the lump in my throat until it burned. Behind him, my mother stood silently in the dim hallway light, worry softening her face. As he turned away, she stepped forward and pressed something small and cool into my palm. It was her silver locket, etched with a delicate pattern of wildflowers. Inside was a photo of my grandmother, a woman I'd never met but whose eyes mirrored my own. "Your grandmother left this for you," my mother whispered. "She wanted you to have courage when the world told you not to." Her hand lingered over mine for a heartbeat, then she stepped back before my father could return. I held the locket so tightly that the metal edges bit into my skin, leaving tiny crescents that stung but steadied me. That night, as the last train rattled out of the station, I boarded with nothing but a worn suitcase, my mother's quiet blessing, and the locket hidden against my heart. I didn't look back. The train's wheels thundered like a drumbeat of defiance, carrying me toward a life that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. And though I trembled with every mile, a single thought anchored me. I would build a life no one could dismiss, no matter how long it took. New York smelled of rain and ambition the night I arrived. The station lights glowed a harsh yellow, casting long shadows on the wet pavement. My suitcase felt heavier than it was, as if it carried not clothes, but every expectation I'd left behind. I rented a narrow room in a walk-up on West 96th Street, where the wallpaper peeled like tired petals. The radiator clinked through the night, but I slept soundly. Exhaustion can be a strange comfort. My first weeks were a blur of rejection. Offices turned me away before I'd even finished my pitch. At one interview, a man with a gold watch looked me over and said, almost kindly, "Sweetheart, this is a tough city for a girl alone. Maybe find a husband first." I smiled, swallowed the sting, and walked out. It was in a crowded bookstore on a rainy Thursday that I met Claire Whitman, a brisk woman in her 50s with a voice like warm honey and the sharp eyes of someone who'd fought for every inch of her own success. She owned a small but thriving publishing agency and caught me straightening a crooked stack of novels near the register. "You care about books?" she asked, one eyebrow arched. I told her I cared enough to work for them. By the following Monday, she had me organizing manuscripts and proofreading galleys for little more than subway fare. But Claire believed in me. She demanded excellence, yet offered guidance with the patience of someone who remembered how it felt to be underestimated. The work was grueling, late nights spent over red-marked pages, coffee going cold beside me as the city's sirens wailed below. But each manuscript I polished felt like a step towards something that was mine alone. 6 months in, Claire handed me a slim envelope. "Your first bonus," she said. "You earned it." Inside was a check larger than my father's annual salary when I was a child. I stared at the numbers, heart hammering. For the first time, I wasn't merely surviving, I was building. From there, opportunities bloomed. Within 5 years, I had risen to senior editor, my name quietly appearing in acknowledgments of bestsellers. I bought a small brownstone in Brooklyn. Nothing flashy, just a place where the morning light pooled on hardwood floors. I sent postcards home occasionally, brief notes about steady work and making friends, never mentioning the growing savings account or the awards lining my office shelf. The silver locket never left my neck. Its weight was both memory and promise, a reminder of the night I chose myself. Years passed. I married a kind man, Daniel, who admired not only my work, but the stubborn streak that fueled it. Together we raised our son, Michael, and built a quiet life. When Daniel passed suddenly, I leaned on the strength I'd forged long ago, guiding Michael through grief and into manhood. By the time Michael married Lauren, my success was something I still wore lightly. I never bragged. I never needed to. But as I watched my grandson grow into the man his father and great-grandmother would have been proud of, I knew one truth as clearly as the locket's cool touch against my skin. People often mistake silence for weakness. I had simply chosen to let my strength speak when the time was right. The dining room of Harper's on the Lake had fallen into a silence, so deep it seemed to swallow the soft jazz drifting from the speakers. Lauren's words, "You embarrass me. I'm disgusted by you," still hung in the air like smoke. Ethan's eyes darted from his mother to me, confusion knitting his brow. Michael, my son, sat frozen, his hand half raised toward his water glass. The other guests, friends from Ethan's class, a few of Lauren's colleagues, shifted uncomfortably, the scrape of a chair leg the only sound. I felt the locket against my skin, cool and steady. My grandmother's eyes stared up at me from its tiny photograph, the same eyes that once gave me courage on a dark train ride. Slowly, I set my napkin beside my plate and rose. "Lauren," I said, my voice even, carrying just enough to reach the far end of the table. "You've chosen quite a moment for honesty. Perhaps it's time I offer some of my own." Her lips tightened. "This isn't the place." "Oh, but it is," I interrupted gently. "Because this night isn't only about Ethan's success. It is about every quiet triumph that made this moment possible." I let the silence stretch, the room waiting. The soft glow of the pendant lights caught the silver of my locket as I lifted it between 2 fingers. Decades ago, I boarded a train with nothing but this and a suitcase. I began. My father told me I'd come crawling back. Instead, I built a life no one could take from me. A low murmur rippled through the table. I started at the bottom of a publishing house. I worked through nights when the city never slept. I built an imprint that, today, produces some of the books you all read on your flights and coffee breaks. I felt Ethan lean forward, eyes bright. Michael blinked, as if seeing me for the first time. Lauren's carefully drawn brows twitched. You own an imprint?" "Yes." I met her stare. "And last year, when Ethan was accepted to Columbia, the scholarship covered only half. The rest." I paused, letting the weight of my words fall. "I paid it, quietly, because I wanted my grandson to fly without knowing who built the runway." The table went still. The candle flames flickered as if the room itself inhaled. "I have never asked for thanks," I continued, my voice soft but firm. but I will not be shamed for the choices that made me who I am. Lauren's face flushed crimson. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The confidence that usually sharpened her tone seemed to drain away. Michael finally spoke, his voice low. "Mom, why would you?" He stopped, looking at his wife. "Why would you say that to her?" Lauren stared down at her plate, the stem of her wineglass trembling in her fingers. I turned to Ethan. "Ethan, your success tonight is yours alone. But know this. Your future is built on many quiet sacrifices. Never underestimate the power of a silent strength." His eyes glistened. "Grandma, I had no idea." I rested a hand on his shoulder. "You weren't meant to. That was my gift." The room seemed to exhale, the tension softening like melting ice. Guests exchanged cautious smiles, forks lowered back to plates. The soft jazz swelled once more. I looked back at Lauren, who now sat pale and wordless. "Shame," I said quietly, "belongs only to those who try to diminish others. I carry none." The locket warmed against my skin, as though my grandmother's spirit approved. The clinking of cutlery gradually resumed, but the air still held the electricity of things unsaid. I remained standing, my hand resting lightly on Ethan's shoulder, the silver locket glinting in the candlelight. Lauren finally raised her gaze. The icy confidence she wore so easily had cracked. Beneath it, something like uncertainty flickered. "I didn't know," she said, her voice quieter now. You thought you understood me." I finished gently. "Most people mistake quiet for weakness." Michael reached for my hand. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I shook my head. "There's no need for apologies from you, Michael. But there are things we must be clear about from this night forward." The room hushed again. Even the waiter, halfway to the kitchen, slowed his step. "Lauren," I said, my voice steady but not unkind, "family is not built on appearances. It is built on respect. I have watched you care for Ethan, and I know you love my son. But tonight's words, those cut deeper than you realize. If we are to move forward as a family, there are conditions." Her eyes widened, but she did not interrupt. "First," I said, "Ethan must be free to follow his own dreams, not the ones we imagine for him. You will encourage that freedom, even when it frightens you." I turned to my grandson, who straightened in his chair. "Second," I continued, "in this family we will speak to each other with honesty and kindness, even in anger. No more silent judgments dressed as clever remarks." Lauren's fingers tightened around her glass, then slowly relaxed. "And third," I said, letting my voice soften, "we honor the sacrifices of those who came before us. That means acknowledging, without resentment, the quiet labor that gave us these opportunities. Whether you tell Ethan now or years from now, he deserves to know the truth of where he comes from." For a moment, no one moved. Then Ethan stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the table. "I promise, Grandma," he said, his voice firm. "I'll remember." Michael nodded, his eyes shining with something between pride and regret. Lauren lowered her head, then looked at me directly. Her voice trembled. "I was wrong, and I will do better." The sharpness that had defined her all evening had softened, like frost melting under the morning sun. I gave her a small nod. "That's all any of us can do. Better than yesterday." The waiter cleared his throat softly, as if the room had finally released its breath. Conversation slowly returned, tentative at first, then warmer. I sat back down, the locket warm against my skin. The power in the room had shifted, not in dominance, but in understanding. It was not victory I felt, but a quiet certainty. This family would no longer underestimate the strength of the woman who had built its foundation. The evening's tension thinned like mist over the lake. Conversation picked up in cautious waves, first a ripple of small talk, then a slow current of laughter that felt almost like relief. Ethan shifted his chair closer to mine. "Grandma," he whispered, "I don't think I've ever been prouder to be your grandson." I squeezed his hand, my chest warming with something far deeper than pride. "Remember, Ethan," I said softly, "strength isn't always the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it's the one that waits for the right moment to be heard. Across the table, Michael and Lauren spoke in low tones, their faces turned toward one another. Whatever passed between them, I saw the small movement of Michael's hand covering hers, a silent agreement to start again. Lauren caught my eye. She didn't speak, but the slight nod she offered carried an apology more genuine than any elaborate speech. I returned it with a quiet smile. I touched the locket at my throat, the silver warm now from the heat of my skin. For years it had been my private talisman, the promise of my grandmother's courage when the world doubted me. Tonight, it was something more, a bridge between generations, a silent witness to the strength we pass on when we choose to stand tall. I thought of my mother slipping it into my hand on that dark porch long ago. Her own quiet rebellion had given me the courage to begin my life, and now Ethan would carry that same inheritance, not of money, but of resolve. Outside, the lake caught the last of the twilight, a sheet of silver and rose. I watched it shimmer and felt a calm certainty settle over me. We had all been changed tonight. When the waiter brought out dessert, the clink of plates sounded less like routine and more like a benediction. I turned toward the window, my reflection layered against the fading light. In it, I saw the young woman who once trembled at the station platform and the woman I had become, steady, unshaken, finally seen. I whispered, just for myself and the women who came before me, a final truth that needed no applause. I have nothing to prove, only a life to honor.